14 months ago, I closed a $75,000 AI deal, and I had absolutely no idea how to build it myself. I didn't write any of the code, I didn't have a technical co-founder, and I didn't even have an agency with a team of developers in the wings. And so what did I do? I hired a developer for 30 grand. I managed the entire project, I delivered the system, and I kept $45,000 in profit for myself. And that deal taught me something that completely changed my mind about how I think about this entire industry. See, most people right now are watching videos about AI are trying to become builders. They're learning the tools like N8N, Make, Zapier, and they're watching all of these tutorials, and that's because they're trying to figure out how to code automations and deploy agents. They're becoming what I call bricklayers. Look, we do need bricklayers. Someone has to actually lay the bricks themselves, but bricklayers don't design the building. Bricklayers don't decide what gets built. And most importantly, bricklayers definitely don't keep $45,000 in profit off a single project. And that's because architects do. My name's Ahmed. I call myself the OS architect, and that's not just a fancy title here, it's actually what I do. Because I come in and I help businesses replace their entire stack of broken, disconnected softwares with one unified system that they can actually own. I'm not talking about these random automations that you see online or like chatbots or AI call agents. And that's because I focus on complete business infrastructure, custom built, fully connected, and again, owned by the businesses I work with. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I went from zero technical skills to being able to close high-ticket AI deals. More importantly, how you can do the exact same. But before I break down that $75,000 deal, you need to understand where this all started. Because right now, if you're stuck trading hours for dollars, or you're a business owner drowning in disconnected tools, or you've been watching these AI tutorials wondering, what do I actually do with this? Well, this video will change how you see business forever. If we go back to 7 years ago when I was 17, I had a panic attack, and it wasn't the first one, but it was definitely the last one. And this one hit very differently. And it's because, I was sitting in my room, I was staring at the ceiling, and I felt my chest get very, very tight. My heart was racing, my brain just started spiraling. And I remember just thinking, what am I doing here? Where is this going? What is the point of any of this? I had this existential crisis of why I wasn't able to control my thoughts and my emotions. It really just hit me clear as fucking day. I just told myself, it's your fault. It's all your fucking fault. I was looking in the mirror, telling myself this. And I know to some of you it might sound harsh, but it was honestly the most freeing feeling I've ever felt. And the reason it hit so hard is because I realized that if the reason my life looked the way that it did, it also meant that I had the power to change it. That was a moment that my victim mentality died inside me. After that, I went extremely hard. I got into sales, HVAC sales specifically. I became one of the top performers in the company. And by the time I was 20, I was managing a team doing over $1 million a month in sales. Yeah, we were selling literally $1 million every single month. And I was only making about $18,000 at the time. I was creating $1 million in monthly value for someone else's business, and all I was getting was 18 grand for myself. 18 grand a month at 20 years old, sounds like the dream. Everyone's like, wow, you're really up. But it wasn't. And because that $18,000 a month looked like I was waking up at 6 a.m. I was on turf by 9. I was driving 10,000 kilometers every single month, basically working 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I was doing all of that to build someone else's dream while telling myself I was building my own. I had some income, but I didn't have actual freedom. And that's really when I realized something that would take me years to understand, which is income without freedom is just a fancy cage. And so I quit. I bought myself a one-way ticket to Bali. I sat on the beach with my laptop and I was trying to figure out what the hell I was actually supposed to do in my life. And that's when something really clicked in me. I looked around and I saw all these people, these digital nomads, entrepreneurs, people running their businesses from their phones. And I realized they weren't smarter than me. They were not more talented, and they definitely weren't luckier. They just understood something that I didn't understand. They weren't trading their time for money. They weren't bricklayers. They had built systems, and these systems that worked while they slept. Systems that didn't require them to physically be present, systems that they owned. Not just the surface level stuff. The infrastructure, the operations, where the information flows, where the bottlenecks happen, and where time gets wasted. I really just started seeing businesses in a completely different manner. Not a collection of people and products, but as systems, as operating systems. Over the next 4 years, I built and scaled multiple businesses, some to even 7 figures annually. But more importantly, I was refining a framework, learning to see every business as an operating system with 5 core pillars. Every single business has all 5 of these. And that exact framework is what led to that $75,000 deal, and every deal since. That deal I actually sold to my boss at the HVAC company that I was working at years earlier, who was also getting screwed by that employer. And he ended up starting his own HVAC company, and they were making about $2 million a month when we reconnected. He had 40 employees, and by every traditional metric, his business was successful. But he was facing the same exact problem we'd both lived through, which is drowning in disconnected systems, tools that didn't talk to each other, and information living in people's heads instead of on screen. So I asked him a question, how much are you spending a month on every software? And he earned it out to be around $10,000 a month. And I asked him how many of those systems actually talk to each other. And he laughed. He said maybe 10% if I'm lucky, right? That's because the information isn't automatically being transferred across the software stack that he was using. And so I said, what if instead of renting 30 different tools that don't talk to each other, what if you owned one system that did everything? Custom built, how your business actually works internally. It's all fully connected and it's actually yours forever. And I see his eyes light up. He's like, yes, that's exactly what I was looking for. We got on a call later that week. I walked him through the entire business using the framework I'm about to teach you here in a minute. I mapped out all 5 pillars of his operation. I showed him exactly where information was flowing through human hands and when it should be flowing through systems. And then honestly, I didn't know how to quote this. I just quoted him $75,000 for a complete operating system, and he said yes. And the reason that the $75,000 deal was actually a steal for him, and that's because 5 years ago, building a custom operating system like this would have cost him easily $500,000, if not more. 6 months of development work and a team of like 10 developers at traditional agency rates. But today we have AI assisted development, and we delivered it in just over 2 months with 2 developers for $30,000 in build cost. He ended up paying $75,000 for something that used to cost him $500,000, and now he owns it forever. That's not just a good deal. That's on a different level, on a different universe. And this is really where it gets interesting. Remember, I didn't just build it myself. I understand system architecture deeply, how APIs connect and how data flows, what's technically possible. I don't write the code myself. That's because I didn't need to. I'm not a bricklayer, I am an architect. So I didn't sell him code. I sold him, first of all, diagnosis, right? An audit. I understood his business better than any single developer ever could. I asked the right questions, and I found where information was stuck, where the context was being lost, where his team was actually drowning in manual work. A developer can't do that. A developer comes in and asks, what do you want me to build? I came in and showed him what he actually needs. I was a consultant. And that's the difference between a bricklayer that waits for instructions and an architect that creates the instructions. Once the consulting part was done, I sold him the blueprint. I designed the complete operating system, and I mapped out every single piece, every single connection, and every single workflow that eventually became the master plan for the system that we built. And the developers I hired for $30,000, well, they just followed my blueprint. He was the bricklayer, I was the architect. I paid a premium because I valued speed and I knew that I had safe margins. Now I have better vendors and I would probably pay closer to 15, but really the thinking is the same. Architects delegate execution. And lastly, I sold the outcome. I didn't sell features, I didn't sell AI agents or automations. I sold a complete change from drowning in disconnected tools to owning one system, a system that will increase efficiency and overall profits in his business. That's what the $75,000 buys. Not code, not labor. It requires the thinking aspect behind what we sold. I profited $45,000 on that deal, and that was about 14 months ago. Since then, I've used this exact same framework to close deals, ranging anywhere from $8,000 to over $100,000. Alcohol brands, real estate agents, advisory firms, credit repair companies, different industries, but they all had the same broken operating systems. Every single one follows the same pattern. Diagnose the system, design the blueprint, and deliver the outcome. And that's the difference between being a bricklayer and an architect. Bricklayers trade time for money. They get paid for labor, they're very replaceable. And they're competing with thousands of other people who do the exact same thing. So they're building cages for themselves. But architects own the business. They get paid for thinking. They can't be as easily replaced. And they're a category of one. They build true freedom. So my question for you is, which one do you want to be? Because if you want to become an architect, you need to understand the framework, the actual method for understanding any business and designing an operating system. And so if that's you, let me show you exactly what that framework is. Every business, and genuinely, every single business runs on these 5 pillars. Doesn't matter if you're a solo consultant or a 100-person agency, doesn't matter what industry you're in, these are the 5 pillars that are universal across the board. And when you understand them, you can walk into any business, find exactly where they're bleeding time and money, and design an operating system that fixes it. So here's a framework. Pillar 1 is going to be acquisition. It's how businesses get paid, right? Cold outreach, paid ads, content marketing, referrals, partnerships, whatever channels that they're using to put potential customers into their pipeline. When you're looking into a business, you have to ask them, where do your leads come from? How are they qualified? What's currently being done by hand and what's being done automatically? And very importantly, where do the leads get lost or fall through the crack? The AI opportunity here is absolutely huge, because we can do lead research at scale, we can do personalized outreach, automatic follow-up sequences, all the stuff that requires someone to sit there and do manually, but we systemize it. Pillar number 2 is going to be marketing. This is how they communicate value to the world. Content creation, social media presence, brand voice, email newsletters, case studies, everything that builds trust and positions them in the market. Like, who creates our content? How consistent is the output? What's the approval process for those pieces of content? Where's the bottleneck that slows everything down? On the other side here, the AI opportunity is content generation, repurposing across platforms, maintaining consistent voice, all the stuff that takes forever and drains creative energy, all handled by systems. Pillar number 3 is going to be sales and conversions. This is how leads become customers. The discovery calls, the proposals, objection handling, contract negotiation, follow-up sequences. Questions when you're coming into this pillar is, what's the close rate? Where do the deals die? What information is actually being tracked? So the AI opportunity here can be, call prep and research, proposal generation, complete CRM automations, pipeline forecasting, so they know what they can expect in future sales. Everything that actually helps sales reps focus on actually selling instead of admin work. And coming from a veteran salesperson, I'm telling you right now, salespeople hate admin work. They would rather just focus on doing the sales. And because they hate it so much, data gets leaked, and which means that the team is not working efficiently. So we can take more off of their shoulders in the admin work that is extremely important, but they don't want to do, so they can focus on what they actually want to do, which is sales, because that's where they get paid. And pillar number 4 is delivery and retention. And this is how value gets delivered and how customers stay, right? It's the core service fulfillment. The client communication and the quality control. This also includes upsells and renewals, check-ins with customers, and really just the entire fulfillment structure. Questions for a business here is, what's actually being delivered? Where are the delays? Why do your clients leave? And what's undocumented? The AI opportunity could be task automation, research and drafts, progress tracking, and the relationship management. We can do churn prediction, so we can catch deals that might be lost earlier and save them. And really all the operational stuff that either gets done poorly or doesn't get done at all. And the last and final pillar is number 5, which is operations. This is everything else that keeps the lights on. Finance and invoicing, HR and team management, admin documentation, SOB building, legal and compliance. This is a massive, massive one, and it requires tribal knowledge, and this stuff lives in people's heads. So questions that we can have for a business is, what knowledge lives only in people's heads, right? What breaks when someone leaves, right? Where's that key man risk? Where's that manual data entry actually happening? What's that biggest sink of time that no one actually wants to deal with? And the AI opportunity here is invoice generation, document creation, knowledge capture, all the stuff that no one wants to do, but the businesses literally cannot function without. And here's a very key insight, and this is probably the most important thing I'm going to say in the entire video. When you look at these 5 pillars, your job as an architect is to find one thing. Where's information flowing through human hands when it shouldn't be? Every time a human has to manually move information from one place to another, there's a lot of friction. That's wasted time, and that's actually an opportunity for errors. That's where money is left on the table. So I want you to think about it. How many times a day does someone on your team copy information from one app and paste it to another? Now, how many times does someone have to be asked, where's that document? Or what's the status on this? Every single one of those moments is a leak in the system. The bricklayer just sees that and thinks, oh, I'll automate this one task. Versus the architect who sees this and thinks, I'll design a system where the information flows automatically across all the 5 pillars. And that's the difference between building disconnected automations and building an operating system. And this is what businesses are actually desperate for, not just another tool that might capture their attention, but they actually need a system. When you have the ability to walk into a room and understand their 5 pillars and show them exactly where their operating system is broken, that's when you stop competing on price. That's when you become irreplaceable to a business. And that's when you become the only person who can actually solve their problem. That is what an architect does. The main reason I'm making this video right now is because we are living through the biggest wealth transfer since the invention of the internet. Think about it. 5 years ago, if you wanted a custom software for your business, you really only had two options. Number one is that you pay $500,000 for a traditional agency, 6 months of work, team of 10 developers, and really just enterprise pricing. Option two is that you rent out a bunch of SaaS tools that kind of work together, but they don't really talk to each other. You're still gonna have to pay 10 grand a month. These were your only choices: build expensive or rent forever. But AI has completely collapsed that cost structure. What used to require $500K in engineering can now be done for $15,000 to $20,000. It's also dropped down development times from potentially a year down to a couple months. Economics have dropped by 90%. Businesses are still stuck in that old model. They think they either have to pay $500,000 to build a system or rent it forever. They don't realize there's a third option, which is you can own your own system, custom built, fully connected for a fraction of the cost. And that's where the architect comes in, because the barrier isn't technical anymore. The barrier is understanding. You need to be able to walk into a business, diagnose their operating system, design a blueprint, and show them the new possibility. The developer who actually does the building for $20,000 can't do that entire process. They're still waiting for instructions. Business owners continuously drown in software chaos and they don't even know what's possible, but you can. Because if you understand business, if you can think in systems, if you can see these 5 pillars clearly and find out where information is flowing, then you become the bridge between the old world and the new world. And that really is the main opportunity of our lifetime. But somehow this change has brought in a whole bunch of bricklayers who are trying to build random automations. They're doing another chatbot, one more tool that adds more chaos instead of solving it. Right now you have the option. You can be a bricklayer, or you can learn to think in systems and understand businesses and learn to design real change for businesses. That's because bricklayers don't get free. They just build a nicer cage, kind of like the one I had when I was working in HVAC. Architects, on the other hand, get free. Now I have one question for you. Which one are you gonna be? A bricklayer or an architect? I want you to drop down your answers in the comments. I read every single one. I'm here to support. I'm here to make more videos to help you guys out. And if this video clicked for you, if you felt something shift, then subscribe and hit the notification bell, because I'm going to be breaking down a whole lot more on this channel. Real strategies, real stories from real projects, how to do the sales, literally how to do everything from A to Z. On the other hand, if you're a business owner and you're tired of all the broken softwares and all the tools that don't connect, and you really want to be part of the new ecosystem of the new generation of businesses that operate with AI, with integrated software, then just click the Ante Digital link down below in the description. You can book a call with my team. We'll look at your business, we'll find out where things are broken, and we'll show you exactly how a real operating system could look like for you. No pressure at all, it's just for clarity. My name's Ahmed, I'm the OS architect, and I'll see you in the next one.